Today we're going to be doing an experiment on time over distance, and we're going to be incorporating skateboarding into it. And someone's going to get pushed. We're going to take the time and the distance down. We're going to put it into a graph. We're going to show you how it's done. Stay tuned. Joe's going to start out with slow pushes, and then in the middle, he's going to go fast. In order to find velocity, we're going to need two things, time and distance. To find velocity, we're going to take Joe's distance that he traveled and divide it by the time interval.
Alright. For the 0 to 5, for the interval of 0 to 5, Joe covered 5 meters at 1.80 seconds. So all you have to do is 5 meters divided by 1.80 seconds. That is 2.7, and this demonstrates an increase in velocity because Joe had a velocity of 0 meters per second at the start.
Go. For the interval of 0 to 5 meters, Joe had a initial velocity of 0 meters per second and a final velocity of 2.77 meters per second. You have to take the final velocity of 2.77 meters per second and subtract the initial velocity of 0. So, the difference in velocity is 2.77 meters per second. Now you just have to divide this difference in velocity by 1.80 seconds. Which is the time for this interval, and Joe, the acceleration is 1.53. Because this answer is positive, it represents an increase in acceleration.
Of 5 meters to 10 meters, Joe covered 5 meters in 1.3 seconds. So that's 5 meters in 3 seconds. And then you do it in the calculator. 5 divided by 1.03. That's 4.85. So put that there. As you can see, Joe's previous time was 2.77 meters per second. So that means that this is an increase in velocity. There we go.
For the interval of 5 meters to 10 meters, Joe had an initial velocity of 2.77 meters per second and a final velocity of 4.85 meters per second. You have to take the final velocity of 4.85 meters per second and subtract it by the initial velocity of 2.77 meters per second. And the difference of the velocity is 2.08 meters per second. You now just have to divide the 2.08 meters per second by 1.03 seconds and do that. And when you do that, you get 2.01 meters per second. Because the answer is positive, it represents an increase in acceleration for this interval.
Interval of 10 meters to 15 meters, Joe covered 5 meters in 1.15 seconds. So just do 5 meters divided by 1.15 seconds. And you got 4.34 meters per second. This demonstrates a decrease in velocity because in the previous interval, Joe had a velocity of 4.85 meters per second.
For the interval of 10 meters to 15 meters, Joe had an initial velocity of 4.85 meters per second and a final velocity of 4.35 meters per second. You have to take the final velocity of 4.35 meters per second and subtract the initial velocity of 4.85 meters per second. And you would get negative 0.5. The difference velocity is negative 0.5 meters per second. Now you just have to divide this difference in the velocity by 1.15 seconds, which is the time for the interval. And you would get negative 0.43. Now you just have to divide the different velocity acceleration is negative 0.43 meters per second squared. Because this answer is negative, it represents an acceleration or a decrease in acceleration for this interval.
For the interval of 15 meters to 20 meters, Joe covered 5 meters in 4.06 seconds. So you have to do 5 divided by 4.06. Put it in your calculator. You get 1.23. This demonstrates a decrease in velocity because the previous interval Joe had was the same thing, 1.23.